Hey everybody, welcome to the Erudition Network. My name is Eddie Phillips. This is our daily, uh, or weekly, I should say, Q&A, interactive Q&A show that we do every Thursday. Um, we don't have anybody currently on right now. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds, as always, to allow people to connect and to know that we're actually live and up and ready to go. Today, I have my son with me, my oldest son with me.
Hello, everybody.
Um, what we're going to do today is go forth and play by ear. What we want to try to do is answer some questions. The Q&A broadcast is designed to allow for historical questions on Black history. We do this show every Thursday. We invite people to come, join us and get on and actually see, um, ask questions with their kids if they so feel, um, and just have a good time and answering and asking questions. Uh, the uh, 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 the interactive is always ad hoc, so you never really know um, what we're going to talk about um, on the show. Um, Trying to figure out why the StreamYard just came up, but uh, we'll get that off of here. Currently, I think we have. All right, there it is. Did you put that on there, Teddy?
No, I don't know why that was up
That
there.
was weird. Anyway, so we have two people up on here, and I'm just gonna go forth. Hopefully, some are joining our page. Um, so what I looked at this recently, and I wanted to discuss some things. But I feel like sometimes we get away from the purpose of these episodes on Thursdays. And I don't want that to hurt our audience or to keep audience away. So I don't like to get on and bloviate and just talk. What I really like to do is to try to get people to come, to ask questions, to be interactive um, about either what's going on current in our climate, uh, what things that they may not quite got a good handle on historically, and I really like for our young people to be able to come on, and it's one of the reasons why most often I will have one of my sons online with me, so that we are able to provide that, to give that to you, so that you can kind of get a young person's perspective. Because in the end of the day, with everything that is going on, they are our future. I know that sounds so canned and coined, but they really are. And we have to prepare them by making sure that they understand, um, have knowledge of their history. And so that's one of the reasons why we do the show, and why I'm happy to do it every week. If you want to comment on the show, I would ask you to go to the link and click it so that you can allow StreamYard um, to showcase your questions and we can highlight it. Eric, I see you're on here. Good to see you. No, you're old. You are no longer young. But if you want to feel young, you're only as young as you feel. All right, Teddy. Let's get into this. We got a couple people on, and so let's go at it. Um, One of the things I wanted to talk about this week, if we weren't going to get anybody to come and ask any questions, I wanted to talk about history in itself. We have done several episodes over the last month or so. We've really tried to stay consistent with the interactive show. But I guess my question, what I want to put out here is, and I want to ask you, and I'm going to showcase you when I ask you this. Why do you believe? And this is a good question. I saw this on. I was reading in Charles Lowen's book, one of his books. Why do you think, in your perspective, and Eric, you're out here too. Why do you think Black history has been taught to us the way they do? That's the first part of my question. And once you answer it, I'll give you another one. But why do you think that we're taught Black history or not taught Black history in the way that we are? And I'm going to showcase, so you go ahead and do that.
I believe the reason that we are taught Black history the way that we are is simply because they don't want you to know a lot. Because if you knew even as much as Thurgood Marshall and what he did, then you go, oh, so the system does work, can work rather, for the good of Black people. But even in our right now today, you see that the system, they don't want it to be for you. They would rather beat you down and have every excuse to beat you down for no good reason. There was a situation on the news that happened just as today, where he was homeless. He wasn't hurting anybody. He went to go relieve himself, and two cops showed up and beat him bloody, and then used hand sanitizer to wipe off the blood on their hands. And it made me think back to the Casual Killing Act. Just beat down a civilian. Oh well. Wash your hands and get in the car.
So you said it makes you think about the Casual Killing Act, right? Where as long as you're disciplining, and let's clarify to people out there what the Casual Killing Act is. The Casual Killing Act was designed to showcase, basically what it said is that if you were disciplining a slave, then and then in the process of that they died, that was perfectly legitimate and okay.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, since you were doing a criminal act of public indecency, I guess, then they gave them the right to beat the snot out of you. So I guess.
So I see Eric is on here. Eric he said because we are thought of as inferior race, and the more we know, the more dangerous we can be without unbound intelligence. Hence, while reading and writing for us was illegal for some time. Then he later went on to say, knowledge is power, and power is what they don't want to. Exactly. We discussed this last week. Really, what it comes down is power. But there is another part of this. I think I was on someone's show a couple of months ago, and I made a comment about false consciousness. Right? We have a tendency in this country to have what is called false consciousness, right? And what that means is, because we don't know our history, or because it's not taught to us in the way that we should be taught, we develop a sense of ourselves that is not actually correct. It's not fully developed. To give you an extent of that is that if you surround yourself in the idea that everyone in your family is a thug, has been a thug, has done jail time, they're no good nicks. You can choose whatever your moniker that you want to call them. But if you assign that idea in your mind as a child, it's very much easier for you to go join a gang. It's very much easier for you to go out and deal drugs. And sadly, the idea of that false consciousness is huge in the Black community, and it has been a part of us ever since slavery. And so when we go back and we look at, like you said, the Casual Killing Act, or when we go back and we look at the way the masters treated the slaves, it was really designed to make us seem less than, right? And to hold us mentally, not just physically, very often people do not understand that we were held in both mentally and physically, and to some extent even spiritually, because we were taught a spiritual system that may be, that is not right also. So another part of that, I'm gonna read a quote here, because I always got a book. I've always got. There are two people who, for the better part of 40 years, wrote a lot of the American textbooks. A man named William F. Griffin and John Marciano. And when they were asked about textbooks and why they were hiding, this is during the 80s, they were talking about the Vietnam War, and why they didn't want to share certain tragedies of the Vietnam War. They said by homogeny, we refer specifically to the influence that dominate classes or groups exercise by virtue of their control of ideological institutions such as schools that shape perception as such issues as the Vietnam War. Within history texts, for example, the omission of crucial facts and viewpoints limit profoundly the ways in which students come to view historical events. Further, though their two-dimensional textbooks shield students from intellectual encounters with their world that would sharpen their critical abilities. So when we are denied that, or when I ask you the question about being taught that way, it does. It shields us. It closes us. We don't get a chance to really understand our world around us. Would you agree with that? And that you finished high school, right? And you're taking college classes. Would you agree that history is not as important, and it is taught to you in that way?
For a while, I did think that history, it's not really important, because they keep, mainly because it's just repetition. They keep, well, you can only be taught so much on the same thing before it's like, okay, now I'm just bored.
I'm here now. Yeah.
Because, for example, we know about the Great War before it was called World War I, and then World War II, and then the Civil War. It's like they lived for war.
Wow.
Learn these wars.
That's a statement, my son. That's a statement right there. You made a profound statement right there. So let me ask you a question. This is for everybody out there too. What you just said right there, how many wars do you think you were taught about in history? And I'm going to spotlight you again. I'm going to put the camera on you so you can smile.
Okay, we got World War I, II, the Vietnam War, Civil War. I think that's about it. That sums up about good four wars. I may be missing one.
Can somebody out there name me some of the wars he missed? I'll give it a second. And I'll give you a chance, too, to think about it. This is an interactive session.
Yeah.
So we want to think about this. What do you think you may have missed? What war? What's an important war for African Americans? And I don't want to hear the Civil War. What's an important war for African Americans that we are not taught about?
The American Revolution.
We're taught about that American Revolution.
We got so that's 5. That's a good 5. Yeah, the Spanish-American War. That is true, and the Korean War.
Spanish-American War. That's one. Pastor Rachel said the Korean War. That's another. What about the Seminole War? Do you know about the Seminole Wars, Teddy? When did the Seminole Wars happen? I'm talking about America. When did the Seminole Wars happen?
I haven't heard of the Seminole War.
And that's a good point. Why do you think that you didn't hear about the Seminole War? The first Seminole War started in 1817. And let's go into the history. Do you remember me tell? Because I know I talk to you all about history all the time. How many of you out there know anything about Negro Fort? Pardon my French, but that's what it was called. How many of you know about that? When we talk about President Andrew Jackson, what is the first thing that we're taught that Andrew Jackson did that was wrong? What is pushed through history? And even the last president had a picture of Andrew Jackson that was standing behind him while he was giving awards to indigenous people. Do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember that? And what the thing about the Seminole War that is important is that this is what brought Andrew Jackson to prominence. This is what put Andrew Jackson into the path to become president of the United States that later on led to the Trail of Tears. But you know what Andrew Jackson did in the first Seminole War? Yes, Pastor Ray said he annihilated the Native Americans. Yes, he did do that. But let's talk about Negro Fort, a nigger fort. This was in Florida. And what happened was the Seminole people were a tricultural people. What had happened is that whites, Native Americans, and escaped slaves went down to Florida. A Spanish-held fort down in Pensacola and St. Mark's. And what they did, they built this fort. The Spanish had built it during the Spanish-American War, and they left it there for Spanish who stayed. And the Spanish still owned Florida at the time in 1816. So it was Spanish-held Florida. But because the men and the racist men of the South did not like the idea of slaves escaping and going to Negro Fort, as they called it, they marched troops under the command of General Andrew Jackson. A military force invaded that area. And when they got to that area, what they did is they created them and fought Crow Indians. They blew up a fort and they killed thousands. They will tell you hundreds of people who lived in that fort, men, women, and children. Andrew Jackson was gifted the moniker of the nigger slayer, the Indian killer. He was promoted in American society as a hero. Not only that, and Andrew Jackson then went and took 2 to 3, I'm going to say 2 definitely, Native American children and took them to raise them with his wife. And sadly, at least 2 of those children that we know of died early. But you're not taught that in school. And you're not taught the idea of Negro Fort. And because one of the major reasons that you're not taught it is because any time in our history that there is a resistance, a tricultural resistance, meaning white, black, yellow, brown, all coming together.
Yeah, because I didn't remember the Seminole Wars. I remember we went over the Negro Seminole Scouts, though. We went over them.
What did they tell you all about the Seminole or the Maroons?
They were made up of Indian, and I did that search on my own. They said that they were mostly Indian. We didn't really hear much of the black people.
Exactly. And again, it goes down to the idea of not trying to create that connection between blacks and Native Americans. It is also important to know about the Seminole Wars and the idea of the Seminoles and the Maroons, those 2 names as we call them, why they're important in our history is because a lot of times we neglect to realize that when we talk about the Underground Railroad, What was the impetus? Do they teach you? They teach you about the Underground Railroad. I know that, but what was the impetus of the Underground Railroad? Sean Anthony said they could not let them live in peace. Yeah, there's truth to that. Absolutely, Sean Anthony. Absolutely. It was an issue of peace. It was an issue of peace. But Teddy, I'm waiting on you. The question I just asked.
No, I haven't heard of the impetus of the Underground Railroad.
So we know the Underground Railroad was because we wanted to be the slaves were allowed to journey and to freedom as far all the way as to Canada. And later on one of our episodes, we're going to talk about Calhoun. And just before the Civil War, the fear, the outright fear that white men had for the idea of slavery. When we talk about all of these compromises that were happening before the Civil War, we'll get into that. But the Native Americans play a huge part in teaching the early people who were escaping from slavery how to make it through the woods, where to go, where to hide.
We were only taught about that, about the expedition of Lewis and Clark with Sir Jack Louisa.
But when we talk about that, and it's not covered in our history, and it's not given to us to really focus on. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new to the show, this is an open dialogue. Open dialogue. Please participate and ask and throw questions out and answers. But one of the things that we always do on this show, anything that I'm telling you, expect that there will be a reference and a source. And you will have it at the end. I don't just throw random history out there as fallacy. I want you to learn on your own, and I want you to read and understand further. But yeah, when we talk about the people traveling back and forth, that's who taught them. That's who taught them. It's a closed, hidden history that if you read the slave narratives, they tell you. They tell you. Native Americans were always around black slaves. They were always there. Last week, let's change the subject a little bit. Last week, we had a talk. We were sitting here talking about, just me, because you guys didn't come on, talking about these men who shaped America. Did you watch that episode, Teddy? Yeah. But I did that episode because I wanted people to understand where our mentalities come from, where how America is shaped. I was reading a book this week. Pastor Razor is on here in chat, but I was reading the beginning of his new book, and let me tell you something. And I'm gonna give him a free shout out while we on here. If you want a book, right? This is a great book. This is an outstanding book, and I'm gonna drop that on our page. But I was reading his book, and I'm working on an episode for Charles Carroll, right? And Charles Carroll being the man who wrote the book, The Negro, A Beast or an Image of God. He's always been an issue with me because I know people still read that book. And I have ran into people over the years who have told me, hey, my grandparents had that book, or they read that book. And it's one of these things where a lot of times we assume that racism isn't functionally taught, right? Book taught, right? Mm-hmm. But if we're on here talking about black history, what makes you think that people aren't talking about white supremacy?
We see that now because of the QAnon. We see that with the QAnon. We know they're preaching white supremacy. And it is disheartening when we see that we have nothing to uplift the minority groups. And it's scary because you know what that preaching white supremacy, what it does. You know there's always going to be someone listening. That's what anything that you do, there you can always count on somebody listening. If you can touch one, you have definitely touched at least 1,000.
And I'm not, but so that's a crucial point that you're saying right there. They keep touching, right? They keep touching. They keep doing these things. I was trying to get my notes here, but I wanted to. I was trying to pull up this page. Pastor Ray said, "Good point, young man. QAnon is a perfect example," and they are, because that's what. But where does QAnon get their inspiration from?
It gets it from media. It really derives on the fear and the gullibleness of people. Whoever believes them, whoever doesn't want facts, they don't check anything, and they want you to live in perpetual fear, then that's who they rope in.
Perpetual fear. No, you're right. And keep you, in fear, and running, and not really looking at where the real machinations, where that stuff is coming from. But let me go further. When I was mentioning Pastor Ray's book, he spends time in the beginning of that. The book is outstanding. I haven't read all of it, but it's outstanding. But he talks about the beginning, and biblically, and the idea of the biblical beginning, and how things happen. But whites, what struck me with his analysis was that whites actually, back in the late 1800s, coming out of the Civil War, in the early 1900s, they were being taught this in church. They were being taught a false doctrine. I posted recently on Facebook that the devil mixes truth with lies. And what they did is they had a half truth. That if they would have, like Pastor Ray, if they would have prayed, or if they'd have sought, they would have been able to understand more. They chose not to. They wanted to call us the beast. When Carroll wrote that book, he was a theologian, he was a preacher, he was a researcher, he was a scientist, he was all of these wonderful things that he claimed himself to be. But at the heart of it too, he was a racist. And so in it, Carroll goes into this idea about the Negro, right? And I have to call it that because that's what he called it. And he talks about how God created everything, right? And how it all came down. And he spends all of this time talking about Genesis. Because once people are listening, and the Christian is looking for an answer, and then he's giving them science in it too, right? And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's because they often get it confused that science was not to disprove God, it was to prove his existence. Many of the people, such as Isaac Newton, they believed that there was an entity higher than them, and sought to see and prove to others that yes, this is true.
So what you're talking about right there is what I wanted to talk about. There are two theories. There is, and I wrote them down. The theory of descent and the theory of development. Did anybody teach you this? Have you heard this?
I think I just briefly in philosophy.
Okay, because I know you took a philosophy class. Okay, so could you explain to me the theory of descent?
No,
And I'll put you on the spotlight.
because I don't really know too much about the theory of descent, because to put it like this, it was one lesson, and it wasn't really a lesson, it was a lecture. One of them, one of our students, not the teacher themselves, went up there and explained it. And then it was, what do you believe that theory is about?
So I'm going to share my screen. I was trying to do that. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share to you a part of my a window that I have here. All right, you see that? So this is the actual book, right? This is the book from Charles Carroll. It's disturbing to me because you'll notice certain things on here. And this is why I stress to you all, and I'm going to put his book in here. Pastor Razor wrote 2 extremely excellent books. Excellent revelation type books that really, really we need. And I'm stressing this because of the connection that it has in Black history. Charles Carroll spent 15 years of his life and $20,000. He was haunted up. I think it was Pastor Razor said that he believed that the organization QAnon was from Birth of a Nation. Thomas Dixon was inspired by Charles Carroll. They called him the reasoner. They called him the revelator. They told him he had broken it down. And when we talk about the theory of descent, what he was saying was, right, is that people like Darwin, Haskell, Huxley, Tyndall, Spencer, all these people, Voltaire, had said that God formed this world. And when he formed the world, things came out of it because of the formation. In other words, when he created the plants, the things, and everything else, the Negro is not human. He came forward because of the beast, right? In other words, like a plant, right? A tree is planted and it produces oxygen and it burns things off. So his thought was that these things just descended, right? Or the idea that, okay, you have one animal with another animal and they create another animal, and now we have this whatever beast that is created. But he wanted to specify that the Negro was a beast. And he wanted to specify that by stating that the theory of development, which teaches that the most complex organs is merely a development from the most simple, hence all flesh is akin. He wanted to get away from that. Pastor Razor wrote in his book, and I'm stressing this because he's on here, and I really appreciate it, that he broke it down about, and you have to read it, about the gap theory and understanding what was going on. But why do I bring up this biblical matter on history? Because it affects us. Because it affects us. Because what it has done, right, is it has made us to be not human. They have written us to be something other than them. And that is so important. He said here, he said, at the time they organized their teachers, they manipulated science to create a doctrine of racial superiority for them and inferiority for everyone else, especially blacks. They knew the truth, but they chose to propagate a lie because it was their benefit. In Romans 1:18 says that they hold the truth of God in unrighteousness. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, some of you out there would say, well, why do we care about Charles Carroll?
They hold the truth of God in unrighteousness. In other words, God wills it.
The thing that has always upset me about Carroll and people like him, and I'll give you some of the illustrations. They're disgusting. I'll tell you right now. Here you go. This was taught. So when you see third generation after 1900, men and women, cops, officers, people who have the idea, and you say to yourself, how could they not see me as human? This is taught. And as Pastor Razor said, when you hold the truth in unrighteousness, I don't want to share this with you. I don't want you to come on and see. It's always so frustrating to me. And the reason why we do these programs, interactive is what it is. I want you to ask, I want you to challenge. It's because a lot of this isn't shared to us. You've never seen that before. I guarantee you, in all your years of school, nobody brought up Charles Carroll.
Yeah, I can see why.
But getting back to what we asked earlier, Charles Lawrence said, why are we taught this way? Right? Because there is a theory here that we don't teach the truth. We teach what is acceptable. We teach what is stratified, what will allow communities and governments and everything to function for the benefit, and I hate to say this, it's not a boogeyman mentality, but for the benefit of the white power structure. That has been the case over 300 some years. And now that's not saying that things can't change. Eric keeps asking about when are we going to talk about apartheid and how we're going to an apartheid system. They don't bring up these people, Pastor Ray said, because they don't want you to go in, as he did, by revelation, by God, to go and write a book to teach not just our people, their own people.
Exactly, because that's what scholars do. There's arguments. Somebody would have went and argued with about this.
And some did. Some whites did, right? Who wrote books and said, hey, Carroll's crazy. But when, as I specified last week, those who challenged Carroll only challenged him to say, wait a minute, he's wrong. I'm not saying that the black man is a beast. As I told you about the head of the APA, what they said was, no, they just ignorant, or they're just monsters. But yeah, I'm not going to go so far as put the Bible in it because I got my soul to worry about. But what I will say is that Carroll was right. So when Carroll wrote this book, this is just the first part of the book, right? He also tried to handle it from a scientific. That's why he bought into Darwin and all this theory. That's why he said critical race theory. It's all set up to benefit them. Yes. Sean Anthony said, and they never overcome the racist mentality which spread to the way we are treated today. Because it's like, my son, let me tell you, it's like this. You don't know what you don't know. What did I just say earlier, right? It affects your consciousness. What you think about, what you were taught, if you're not taught fully, if you're not taught properly, becomes your accepted reality. And as I've said many times when I teach people, you're working in a circular mentality. You don't ever leave out of that circle because you loop right back around to go over the same thing. One of the issues that I have a lot of times with African Americans when we teach history is the idea for a lot of them that they come into history thinking, I know everything already. There's nothing in Black history you can teach me because I went through 12 years of school, I've done college, and I know Black history. But as I tell my friends who are archaeologists, who are history teachers, who are whatever, right? But what did you learn from? Where did you learn from? Carter G. Woodson said, when the oppressor becomes the teacher, what are you learning? So I don't hold it against anyone that you don't know some of these people. I don't hold it against us that we don't know what Negro Fort is, what the Seminole Wars is. That's a huge, important part of Black history. The Seminoles, right? Who you remember that movie? I know your mother let y'all watch that, Rosewood, right? Very, 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 very
yes,
deep movie. And there's a part in that movie, Rosewood, that kind of escapes people, where somebody says something and the white man gets mad. I mean, he gets ferociously mad. He says, "You are not a Seminole. You ain't no Seminole. he gets furious. And you know why that was? Because during the Seminole Wars, which you read about, the Seminoles were going in there and destroying racist white people. They were the boogeymen, right? And so anytime the Seminole name was brought up, people got scared. They were like, hey, you ain't. Because they believed they were a tricultural people. And I cannot stress that enough. White, black, other cultures all together, trying to forge a new world. Because if we do not understand that, then we don't understand that we can all work together. Dr. King tried to tell us that. When you read the letter from a Birmingham jail, what is King saying? He said, we can't do it by ourselves. But you white men, you white women who have sat here in silence and watched these atrocities, you have a voice too. You have power too to stand with us. And when we unite, as Pastor Razor said earlier, when we stop letting the truth be hidden, when we come together and we have a discussion like we're doing today, what I try to do with the Q&A, with our kids, with everyone, we learn just what we don't know about each other. Because I don't argue. I'll debate.
We seem to be headed more into trying to understand and live under fallacies of, well, it wasn't refuted, so it's got to be true. And that's why we could think that the Negro is not human, or that they're a Negro to begin with, and that they didn't come from flesh. I remember it in Corinthians, actually, Paul had said, "Are you not carnal?
Are you not carnal?
You are still of flesh."
You know, I teach you all, and your mom teaches you, and we try very hard to prepare you all. And by proxy, that was the tenet that God gave. I truly believe God gave for this program and for what we're doing. We have to understand that we're not like this. Okay? We're more like this than we know. I've sat in rooms with people who were cutthroat, raised by racists, who came to me with knowledge and understanding that was so warped, but they didn't know no better. And as always with me, I'm always going to say, here's a book. Let's sit down. Let's have this discussion, right? Read this. Let's go do this. We are all human. We are all flesh. We are all flesh. And we're brothers and sisters. And if we understand that, there's power in that. That we are better together than apart.
And there is also something in philosophy, since we have mentioned it, of infinite regress. And philosophy, everything it tells you, it is not. There is no such thing as infinite regress. It is impossible. Everything originates from something. But they would have you believe otherwise when it comes to the Negro.
Well, as we've discussed over the last few weeks, right? There are many reasons behind that, but at the heart of it is what you're taught. If people would spend more time doing what we're doing, like right now, having discussions, getting on here. I told somebody recently, I said, it's always so hard for me. I love this show. I love bringing my sons on. I love anybody who wants to come on and discuss history. Pastor Ray said, this is why you need a major voice. Your knowledge needs to be shared, accepted, and applied to our community. We want our community to know these things.
Yeah. And
knowledge unshared benefits no one.
And we also need a figurehead. I do agree with that. We saw with President Trump. They blindly believed the president. That's you should think about that. If they easily believe Trump, right, and regardless of logic, even They blindly followed that man. How long have they been blindly following authority, such as past presidents,
Well, we all
police?
do that. We can't just put it on them, because we do it too.
Yeah,
I have said many times, we don't understand propaganda properly. We don't. Goebbels said, if you tell a lie, tell it enough, people will believe it. They will accept it. They will die for it, because it allows them to feel worth, to feel that what they're saying, what you're saying is absolutely true. Do you think that those millions of people that follow Hitler, those who still follow Hitler decades after his death? Remember, I sat down with you and I let y'all watch that movie with me, and even after Hitler had killed himself, people were still blowing their heads off because they were so afraid that they were going to live in a world without white supremacy, without Nazism, without the idea of Hitler leading them into a 1,000-year Reich. Goebbels' wife killed all of their, just the power of belief. She killed all of their kids, poisoned all of them in the bunker because Hitler had died. And then her and her husband walked out there in the same place where that false god was laid and burned and shot themselves and had them throw gasoline on them. That is the power of being taught a lie and accepting a lie. Sean Anthony said, it is harder to live with truth than to live with lies. That is why we sometimes say the ugly truth. I tell you, your auntie will tell you, you all are. People will follow something they agree with right or wrong. Well, we see that. You know, later, you've been challenging me, Teddy, to do these lessons, standalone lessons again. And I appreciate you for that. But one of the things that we talked about, and the reason why I keep bringing up Carol, there's also Archibald Dunning, which goes over people's heads. But the thing about that we wanted to get in with Carol is that recently I have posted on Facebook, I said, I don't see how you are, what's the word? What do they say, Teddy? How you are making yourself to look strong and independent by showing your naked black booty.
Oh, empowerment. Yeah.
Empowerment. That was the word. Empowerment. Escape.
And
but wait a minute. You just said earlier, right? People follow a false example.
Yeah, they follow authority. They follow whoever they can fit. They fit themselves with. Oh, look at him. He's doing good. He got chains all over himself. It's a facade. And they don't know that. Nicki Minaj, you haven't seen her. Cardi B, she didn't even let her daughter see the WAP video saying it's mature. She got paid for doing that. That right there should have let you know she's doing it for money. But you all let your kids see that and think this is okay, this is acceptable. Meanwhile, the people that got paid just shake their heads and be like, okay, on to the next one.
I was trying to go through here, and I'm not doing this to demonize any culture over the other. I'm not. I truly am not. But I want to show you something here, and I'm gonna do this in real time. I'm gonna do this in real time for everybody that's out here. I'm gonna share my screen. Give me just one moment. But I think that this is so important, and this goes along with the idea of what I'm talking about here. So often, we have this thing. Where is it? It just go. Give me just one moment. Sorry. But I think this is so important, and I really want to show this. All right, the first thing we're going to look at here, we're going to share this screen right here. We're going to look at it together. You see this? You see this? So if we were to go in here and say, look at these pictures, right? You see how and this is just a few of them, but this is an example right here. This is in Google search, right? You see how when we look at country music, that many people, I remember when I listened to some country music, and I remember somebody was like, why are you listening to country music as a black man, right? And I was like, that was the stupidest thing in the world, because country music is a derivative of blues and a mixture of a lot of African American influence in music. But one of the things that you will see with country music, if you notice, and don't get me wrong, they do some things sometimes too, but you notice these pictures, right? Black people in country music, you see a lot of Americanism in country music. If you listen to their music, it's a lot about God, country, love, and all this and all of that, right?
Yeah.
Unity, family. Every now and again, I go out and I get a beer, I get a drink, but I love my wife and this, that, blah, blah. Even when they cheating, they talking about God, right? I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying
God lies under that flag.
Because there you go, their God lies under that flag. That's a heck of a line, but that is true. But then when we see something like that, and I have to be critical, right? I have to be critical, and I have to be honest. When we see something like that, and then we go and we look at this. So if I go and I say rap music, right? I got pictures of people looking thuggish. I got folks who can't seem to keep the idea of something foul out of their mouth. People holding up hands like they shooting guns. The idea of the black woman with her butt out, her breast out, sexualized beyond sexualization, black men grabbing their privates, and on and on and on and on and on, right?
And we're not trying to bash rap music, but rap used to have a purpose. Now all it has is a good sounding beat. And I call rap now good until someone opens their mouth. Because you hear the instrumental and it's like, okay, that's good. And then all of a sudden,
now there's positivity in some rap still. Let's not get it twisted. But the reality of it is that the positivity is always crushed down to the ground, right? There's not too much of it. Nobody wants too much of it, right? We want that thug culture. We want that I slap you this, I hit that, this, whatever, right? Now, I'm not saying that we go out and say that white men are perfect. But what I am going to tell you is that when you go in, and we're going to do that, and you read Charles Carroll, when you read Archibald Dunning, when you read all of these men, Schufelt, and all these ones I talked about last week, and I left references for everybody to go at sources, what you see is how the philosophy and mentality has shaped black culture. And we're gonna as we get ready to close this week, we'll leave that there, because this is what we need to talk about next week. The shaping of black culture. Because see, you just said it. Rap used to have a message. They would do raps about anti-gangs and this and that and that. Even if they themselves didn't constantly live up to it, it was at least in the mainstream.
Yeah, you had Beat Street. You had I'm just trying to keep my head. It used to have a positive meaning, and then somewhere along the lines we lost that. Heck, even gangs were designed to police white people in black communities, but yet somewhere along the lines we decided, no, we're gonna hustle our community.
So I put out a video before we started doing interactives about black cinema, and I wanted to talk about how black cinema worked. But music is the same way, right? What has happened is that people have followed a line. I remember sitting in Bahrain with a bunch of young dudes, and a young guy said to me, I said, I can't get down with that, man, because black women should be reverenced, right? The black woman, biologically, is the mother of all. She is the mother of all. She can have black, white, and whatever children. And so when we understand that, to put her out there with her breast out, her butt out, to treat her as a piece of meat and not the beauty that God created, it's revolting. And yet again, it is continually, consistently done. And the idea of it, the more vulgar they get, the more money they make.
Yeah, that's why.
And so it encourages what? We said it earlier, followership. Pastor Razor said, "You are so correct. I have a childhood friend that is a country music singer. His first major song was My America, and it was heavy emphasis on God and America." Yes, he sent it to me. Yes, before releasing Vimeo. This is. We have gotten so much to a point. I used to say, because my grandfather loved gospel music, right? And we used to always say, we used to be like, man, we would sit there, y'all know, because y'all, before he passed, and we would watch gospel music, gospel music, all the time.
And he loved some James Cleveland.
Right? We would watch this and we would look, and that music stays in you. Recently, the other night, we got together. I put those speakers up and we all sat there and sang karaoke in the house. First, we sing it, of course. We sing everything. So we sing the OJs, Isley Brother, whatever. But I'm not trying to put you on front, but you got on and you sang Walter Hawkins, Thank You. Mm-hmm. And your intention was to sing the words. Yeah. But one thing I remember Walter Hawkins said in the video one time, he said one thing that God did show him about that song is that if you tell God thank you enough, he gonna come visit you.
Yeah, because you start remembering all the things that could have went wrong, what he spared you from, and what is yet to come.
You remember your history, your testimony. You overcome by the words of your testimony. And the blood of Jesus Christ, you overcome. History is so important because it shapes you. God did not allow those things to happen so that you didn't learn from them. He allowed those things to happen so not only do you learn, but everybody who comes behind you, they gonna learn too.
Mm-hmm. That's also why God
as long as you share and you share your testimony.
God has a sea of forgetfulness, but we as human, we don't forget because we still have to live. We still have to learn.
So I just think that I love, because we're coming up on our hour. This has been a good session, especially considering that we kind of said what we were going to talk about. We do somewhat, but see, I have already allowed it to say we're going to do what we're going to do regardless of what people want, what people say about Erudition. I want everybody out there, as we get ready to close out on this session, I want to thank you. Pastor Razor, he left a comment. He said, the black woman is the true Eve. Yes, she truthfully is. And a lot of us don't reverence that idea. The problem I have with my friend's song is that the America that he's singing about is not the America that experienced growing up. Yes. But then that comes down to, again, that consciousness. Too often we got to be honest with what we've lived through and who we are and what we're doing. And the idea of that is why I don't do full-on blooded history lessons in the Q&A. I want people to come on. I want you to ask questions. I want us to delve into some history. And I'm going to throw things out there with you. And then I'm going to give you sources.
We answer questions at the end, and we will tag sources directly into your comment. So that you
I think I had I only put 10 to 15 sources on last week. But I don't just throw, somebody, what's that guy that's out here? Somebody was telling me, it was like, Umar, whatever. I was the one black dude, the Pan-Africanist. And they were like, you kind of like him, man. You throwing things out here. I said, no, because I don't believe in throwing out just random history without a source. It's not just about me bloviating to you. I want us to be able to learn together. Every time I put out an advertisement for this program, ladies and gentlemen, I always put down there and say, let's learn together. Because knowledge here ain't it ain't helping nobody if I don't share.
And even going back to the gospel songs, there is a song that says, "As I minister to you, I minister unto myself." So even we're learning.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, Pastor Razor, that goes on. We get a lot of people who act as if they never experience any racial stress because they want to sell to a market, they want to sell to a system, and that is a problem in itself because we deny self. It'd be better to be honest about it, call it what it is. Over the next few weeks, we're going to start talking more about the Confederacy. Because I got a question, and I'm going to give about another 2 minutes. I got a question the other day from an individual that told me that, people really need to understand that the Civil War wasn't a war for black people. Yeah. And this was a black person. But again, we get into these thought processes. And what we don't know, we don't know. And then if somebody tells us something, that sounds good, but we don't go validate, verify.
Yeah, that's why we call Kanye a genius.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Teddy, I appreciate you coming on here for an hour. I thank everybody who has come on, the viewers that we have. Please, 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 please share this broadcast. We don't get everybody to come on live, and that's fine. But what we really, really like to do is to try to get people to share the broadcast so that we can grow. Last week, Erudition, I boosted one of that show last week, and it reached over 3,000 to 4,000 people in Canada predominantly. And I'm gonna get into that next week why that is, because there's a reason behind that. But we had a huge turnout in Canada. I got people sending me messages. I think we will boost this one and yet again get it further out because we want to grow outside of just our friends and family and influence. We really want to get these words and these messages out here. But again, I just want to say thank you. We're going to get off of here. We're going over our time a little bit. We will see you next week. Thank you for coming on and sharing questions with us. I'm going to leave a link out here for Pastor Razor's book because it's an outstanding book. I'm not finished with it yet, but I just want to tell him thank you because it really, really, really is a good book. I'm going to let my sons read it because it definitely is something that should be shared. All right. Peace out, love, joy. Teddy, I will leave you to say the last goodbyes.
Continue to ask your questions. We will be here to take them. Or just if you don't have questions, just leave your thoughts down where we will try to address them. Thank you. And as always, let's learn together.
Let's learn together. All right, y'all. Later.